He called my candles craft fair trash in front of his coworkers. 3 months later, Nordstrom offered me $250,000 for the same candles. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Alara Whitman. I never thought something as small as a candle could show me who I really married. That night started like any other evening where I had to play the perfect wife. My husband, Grant Holloway, invited 3 people from his office for drinks. I cleaned the house twice. I cooked salmon, rosemary potatoes, and baked a lemon cake from scratch. I wore the blue dress he once said made me look presentable. Before they arrived, I placed my newest candles around the living room. I had been working on a fresh scent for weeks, soft cedarwood mixed with vanilla and a hint of orange peel. It made the house feel warm and calm. Making candles had become my quiet escape. I poured every detail carefully, measuring temperature, trimming wicks, testing burn time. It wasn't just melting wax to me. It felt like building something that belonged only to me. When the guests arrived, everything seemed fine. They complimented the house. They laughed at Grant's jokes. Then one of the women picked up a candle from the coffee table and said, "This smells amazing. Did you buy this locally?" Before I could answer, Grant laughed. "Oh no," he said. "Alara makes them. It's her little hobby. Just craft fair trash." They laughed. I smiled. I even nodded like I agreed. But inside, something cracked. I felt small standing there holding a serving tray while they joked about weekend golf trips and bonuses. I had left my career 2 years earlier because Grant said it made more sense for one of us to focus on the home. He always reminded me that he carried the financial weight. I told myself I didn't mind. I told myself marriage meant compromise. But in that moment, I realized something painful. He didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as someone who needed to stay in her place. After the guests left, I began clearing the dishes. Grant didn't notice how quiet I was. He just said, "Don't be sensitive." It was a joke. A joke. I went downstairs to the small table where I kept my wax, jars, and oils. I lit one of the candles and watched the flame flicker. Instead of crying, I started writing notes. I listed everything I could improve. Better labels. Stronger branding. Higher quality jars. I searched suppliers online. I calculated costs. I made a plan. If he thought it was trash, I would turn it into something undeniable. That night, I didn't sleep. I worked. This time, it wasn't just a hobby. It was the beginning of something he would never see coming. The next morning, I woke up tired but clear-headed. Something had shifted inside me. I wasn't angry in a loud way. I was calm, and that calm felt dangerous. Grant acted like nothing had happened. He kissed my forehead quickly, grabbed his briefcase, and reminded me not to forget to transfer money into the joint savings account. As if I were his assistant. I stood in the kitchen after he left and looked around. The house was spotless. Quiet. Controlled. My entire world felt small, but for the first time, I saw the walls clearly. That day, I stopped treating my candles like a pastime. I began tracking every dollar I spent on supplies. I opened a separate email account just for business communication. I researched packaging companies in other states, so invoices wouldn't arrive at our house with obvious labels. I ordered small samples of better glass containers, thicker, heavier, more elegant. I tested burn times again and again until each candle lasted evenly to the bottom. Grant continued his subtle comments over the next weeks. "You're still playing chemist downstairs? Don't spend too much on that stuff. Just make sure it doesn't smell too strong when I have clients over." Each comment sounded casual, but everyone carried the same message: your work doesn't matter. Instead of arguing, I listened. Then I improved. I studied retail pricing models. I learned about profit margins. I compared luxury candle brands and analyzed what made them expensive: minimalist labels, clean fonts, neutral colors. I redesigned everything. I created a brand name, Ember and Veil. It sounded strong but soft at the same time, like something that could sit on a marble counter in a high-end store. I didn't tell Grant about the rebrand. When he asked what I was doing one evening, I simply said, organizing. He didn't ask further. 2 months later, I reached out to a small boutique in Portland. My hands shook when I sent the email. I introduced the brand professionally. I attached photos. I offered to send samples. I didn't expect a response. But 3 days later, the owner replied. She loved the aesthetic. She wanted 10 units of each scent to test in store. I read the email 5 times before it felt real. I packaged the candles carefully. I included handwritten scent cards. I shipped them myself and paid extra for tracking. Grant never noticed the box leaving the house. 10 days later, the boutique emailed again. They had sold out. Customers were asking for more. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the message while sunlight hit the counter. For the first time in years, I felt capable. Not because someone gave me permission, because I proved something to myself. When Grant came home that night complaining about a difficult client, I listened politely. I served dinner. I nodded at the right moments. He talked about his promotion, about the possibility of becoming partners someday. He said, when that happens, we'll finally be on a different level. I looked at him and thought quietly, I'm already building mine. He still believed I was melting wax in the basement. He didn't know I was building leverage. The second boutique order came 2 weeks later. Then a third store reached out after seeing my candles in Portland. I didn't celebrate loudly. I didn't post about it. I kept everything quiet and controlled. Every morning after Grant left for work, I turned the basement into a production space. I created a clean system, pouring station on one side, cooling racks on the other, packaging table near the wall. I tracked inventory carefully. I reinvested every dollar back into better supplies instead of spending it. Grant still made comments. One night during dinner he said, you know, when I make partner, maybe I'll retire you from your little art project. Retire me? He said it like he would be doing me a favor. I forced a small smile, but inside I felt something sharpen. I wasn't a child playing with crayons. I was running a business he didn't respect because it didn't come with a suit and a title. That night after he went to bed, I stayed up reviewing my numbers. The profit wasn't huge yet, but it was real. It was mine. I realized something important. If I structured everything properly, it could stay mine. The next week, I met with a small business attorney. I told Grant I had a dentist appointment. Instead, I sat in a quiet office downtown and asked careful questions about forming an LLC, about ownership protection, about separating assets. My voice trembled at first, but by the end of the meeting, it was steady. I officially registered Ember and Vale under my name only. I opened a separate business bank account. For the first time in our marriage, I had something independent. Grant's attitude slowly became more careless. He started joking about upgrading his lifestyle once he became partner. He'd mention houses in better neighborhoods, country club memberships, even say things like, you'll need a new wardrobe if we start moving in bigger circles. I noticed how he never said we earned it. It was always him. One evening, he invited colleagues again. I lit my candles, but this time not for their approval. I lit them because they belonged there. During the night, one guest asked where they could buy one. Before Grant could speak, I answered calmly, they're sold in a few boutiques in Oregon. Grant looked at me, surprised. Oh, really? He said lightly. Yes, I replied. They sell out pretty quickly. He laughed, but it sounded thinner this time. Later that night, he questioned me. You're not getting ahead of yourself, are you? Let's not pretend this is something big. That was the moment I understood something clearly. He didn't want me small because I was incapable. He wanted me small because it made him comfortable. And that realization changed everything. I wasn't just building candles anymore. I was building my exit plan. About a month later, something happened that I never expected. One of the Portland boutiques was visited by a regional retail buyer. She wasn't just browsing, she was scouting. The store owner later told me the buyer kept picking up my candles, reading the scent cards, asking detailed questions about sourcing and production. 2 days after that visit, I received an email from a corporate sourcing manager connected to Nordstrom. At first, I thought it was spam. I read it 3 times. Then I checked the email address carefully. It was real. They had discovered Ember and Veil in store and were interested in reviewing samples for a possible seasonal program. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to sit down. I didn't tell Grant. Not yet. Instead, I responded professionally. I thanked them for their interest. I attached a clean product sheet I had prepared months ago just in case something like this ever happened. I listed scent descriptions, pricing tiers, projected production capacity. I made sure everything looked polished and serious. They replied within 24 hours. They wanted samples shipped to their evaluation team. That week was the most intense of my life. I tested every batch twice. I inspected every label for tiny flaws. I upgraded my packaging insert with a simple brand story printed on thick cream cardstock. I didn't sleep much. Grant noticed I was working longer hours downstairs. "What are you obsessing over now?" he asked one evening. "Just refining things," I said calmly. He shrugged. "Just don't burn the house down." I shipped the sample box with overnight tracking. When the delivery confirmation came through, my heart raced. A week passed. Then another. I kept producing for my small boutiques while pretending everything was normal at home. Grant continued talking about his promotion review coming up. He spoke about potential bonuses, about how his firm valued leadership. One evening while he was watching television, my phone rang. It was a Seattle number. I stepped into the hallway to answer. The woman on the line introduced herself as a senior buyer. She said they were impressed with the product quality and brand positioning. She asked detailed questions about scaling production, fulfillment timelines, and supply chain stability. I answered every question clearly. Months of preparation were flowing out of me naturally. When the call ended, she said they would follow up soon regarding next steps. I leaned against the wall after hanging up. My heart felt like it was pounding through my chest. Grant looked over from the couch. "Who is that?" he asked casually. "Business," I replied. He smirked slightly. "Must be a big candle emergency." I looked at him quietly. He still thought this was small. He still thought I was small. But for the first time, I knew something he didn't. The ground under our marriage was already shifting. 3 days later, the email came. They wanted to move forward. Not with a small test. Not with a single store. They were offering a seasonal launch in 50 locations. I stared at the number in the proposal document for a long time. The initial purchase order was $250,000. $250,000. For the same candles Grant once called trash. I read every line carefully before responding. The agreement outlined production deadlines, packaging specifications, and distribution requirements. It was serious. It was real. It was bigger than anything I had imagined. I scheduled the official call for the following afternoon. Grant happened to work from home that day. While he sat in the dining room reviewing contracts for his firm, I took the call upstairs in the bedroom and closed the door. The conversation lasted almost an hour. We discussed scent exclusivity for the season, display placement, and promotional timelines. They were confident in the brand. They believed it would perform well in the home fragrance category. When the call ended, I felt lightheaded. I walked downstairs slowly. Grant looked up. "You look dramatic. What happened?" I placed the printed proposal on the table in front of him. "What's this?" he asked. "An offer," I said. He skimmed the first page casually. Then his expression changed. His posture straightened. He flipped to the pricing breakdown. He read the number again. "That's not real," he said quietly. "It is." For a moment he said nothing. Then he let out a short laugh, but it wasn't mocking this time. It was nervous. "Wow," he said. "I mean, wow. I always knew you'd eventually turn it into something." Always knew. I studied his face carefully. There was no apology. No acknowledgement of what he had said before. Only calculation. He stood up and walked around the table. "This is huge for us," he said. "We need to think smart. We should run the money through our joint account. I can help you structure taxes. Maybe we expand faster." Us. Now it was us. I felt something settle inside me. When he called it trash, it was mine. Now that it had value, it was ours. I smiled politely, but didn't answer right away. That evening, he poured wine to celebrate. He started talking about upgrading the kitchen, about investing profits, about introducing me to contacts who could take the brand even higher. I listened quietly.
He wasn't proud of me.
He was excited about what my success could do for him. And that was the moment I stopped seeing him as my partner. I started seeing him as someone standing in the way. The change in Grant was immediate. The next morning, he woke up early and made coffee for both of us. He hadn't done that in years. He kissed my cheek and said, "We're really building something special."
We.
He asked for copies of the contract. He wanted to review the numbers. He started giving advice about scaling quickly, about hiring staff, about bringing the business under one financial umbrella. Our umbrella, he said. But something inside me had already shifted. I didn't forget the night he laughed at me. I didn't forget the way he reduced my work to a hobby to entertain his colleagues. Success didn't erase disrespect. It only revealed character. Over the next week, his tone became strategic. He began telling his friends about our brand. When he spoke on the phone, I overheard him say, "Yeah, my wife started this candle thing. I pushed her to think bigger." Pushed me. The irony almost made me laugh. One evening, he sat across from me at the dining table, the same table where he once embarrassed me, and said, "We should restructure things legally. It makes sense if I'm officially involved. Protect the family asset." Family asset. I folded my hands calmly. "The company is already structured," I said. He paused. "What do you mean?" "It's an LLC. Registered months ago." He stared at me. "Months ago?" "Yes." "You didn't tell me?" I met his eyes. "You weren't interested." The silence that followed felt heavy. For the first time, I saw something in his expression I had never seen before: uncertainty. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake thinking about the past 2 years. The compromises. The comments. The subtle control over money and decisions. The way I slowly shrank myself to fit inside his comfort zone. The Nordstrom offer didn't just bring money. It gave me clarity. I scheduled an appointment with a divorce attorney the next day. Sitting in that office felt surreal. I explained everything calmly: the business structure, the finances, the timeline. Because I had formed the LLC independently and kept business income separate, the company legally remained mine. When I left the attorney's office, I didn't cry. I felt steady. That evening, I asked Grant to sit down at the table. I placed 2 folders in front of him. One was the finalized Nordstrom contract. The other was divorce paperwork. He looked confused at first, then angry. "You're seriously doing this?" he said. "Over candles?" I looked at him quietly. "No," I replied. "Over respect." For once, he had nothing clever to say. Grant's reaction wasn't explosive at first. It was disbelief. He stared at the divorce papers like they were written in another language. Then he looked at me as if I had betrayed him. "This is insane," he said. "You're throwing away a marriage over pride." I stayed calm. "It's not pride. It's pattern." He stood up from the table and began pacing. "So now that you made some money, you think you're above this? Above me?" There it was. Not sadness. Not regret. Competition. For the next few days, he switched strategies. One moment he was angry. The next, he was suddenly supportive again. "We can fix this," he said. "I'll be more encouraging. I'll help more. We'll be a power couple." Power couple. But I had already seen the truth. His support only appeared when there was something to gain. The legal process moved forward quietly. Because I had separated the business finances months earlier, there was little room for argument. My attorney made it clear. The company was mine. The contract was mine. The income was mine. Grant tried to negotiate involvement. "At least give me advisory equity," he said one night. "I can add value." I looked at him carefully. "You already added value," I said. "You showed me exactly who I needed to become." He didn't like that answer. The house felt tense during those weeks. We moved around each other like strangers. There were no dramatic fights. Just cold distance. Papers signed. Accounts divided. When I moved into a smaller townhouse across the city, I carried my candle supplies myself. The space was smaller but brighter. Sunlight filled the living room in the mornings. The first night alone, I unpacked one box labeled samples. I placed a candle on the kitchen counter and lit it. The scent filled the room slowly. It didn't smell like revenge. It smelled like freedom. A few months later, the Nordstrom launch went live. The display featured neutral tones and clean shelving. My brand name sat centered under soft lighting. Customers picked up the candles, read the scent descriptions, and placed them in shopping bags. I visited one store quietly and stood at a distance watching. No one there knew my story. They just saw quality. Sales exceeded projections during the first quarter. A winter collection followed. Then talks of expanding into more locations. Grant sent one short email months later. I hope you're doing well. I didn't reply. Because the real success wasn't the $250,000 order. It was the moment I stopped shrinking. It was choosing myself when I realized I deserved more than polite disrespect. He once called my candles trash. Now they sit on polished shelves with a price tag that reflects their worth. And every time one sells, I'm reminded that sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's elevation.